And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101. Welcome to Politics 101 on a Tuesday evening. If you are somewhere um, uh, somewhere in in if you're somewhere in Guyana, the Eastern Caribbean, if you are in North America on the East Coast, good evening to you, and good evening to you. We are expecting some guests tonight. We're expecting some guests tonight here on Politics 101. We're expecting GHK Lall tonight. Hello. All right, I'll see about that. Okay. Yes, welcome to Politics 101, wherever you are joining us from. We are continuing our coverage this evening. We expect GHK Lall to join us here this evening. We're paying attention to poverty. You know, we started last week paying attention to poverty, and we talked last night with Professor Clive Thomas on the question of poverty, and we're going to continue. We'll continue to talk about poverty this week. Continue to talk about that because we're arguing that, poverty is real. Poverty is real, and we're continuing to talk about poverty. We are continuing to talk about poverty this week. Welcome, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from Europe. If you join us from Europe, it's good night. Good night. Good night to you.
But this is not.
Communities shell shocked like tattered and torn. Guns replace alarm clocks every dying morn. Wedding pension projects seem a fast as sham, while the usual suspects to the east salam. Well, although they sign a truce, still the bad boys running loose in these killing fields, otherwise known as lava and chill. As the tragic drama unfolds, as we pray for all them lost souls, don't ask whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Oh, and struck from a different hammer. Try tell David rather forget Haiti, cause I'm sorry for lava. Oh, lava, oh, lava, yeah, here we come. Lava, we are so beat at different drums. I've heard them singing dirges for your son. Oh, lava, come let me turn it round. We could make it different. Oh, yeah. For what prophet son, tell me what can you stayed in your pocket from dirty cocaine or high brand sneakers, diamonds and chains. For your new master, you blow out your brother brain from misguided respect and rank, and it sits him up what he planned in this killing frenzy. Is it Beirut or Lavant? As if with your footage on road that crime spirals out of control. Don't ask for whom the bell tolls. It's all as material values we choose over moral values. I say forget Iraq, the real war's all is Lavant. Sing with me, over Lavanti. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Over Lavanti. You are to beat up different drums. I've heard them singing dead songs, dead hymns for your son. Oh, over Lavanti. Come, let me turn it round, turn it round, turn it round. Yeah. Oh. Even quiet Tobago with crime now in effect. A teacher shortcutter to shut up incest. Long time teacher Mildred, Elizabeth is afraid. Now in the same classroom, she gets displayed. The picture I paint is monstrous, but we can't wash we hands like conscious. Look in the mirror, and no blame only Lavant. As for the bosses are paroled, as we will load up the next hole. Don't ask for whom the bell tolls. It's all for no. As material values we still choose. Westmoreland is your turn tomorrow. I said to hell with Saddam, let we rally wrong. Lavanti. Sing with me, Gun Hill Maloney. Yeah, here we come. Gun Hill Maloney, you want to beat that different drum. I tired singing dead song, dead hymns for your son. Oh, Gun Hill Maloney, come let me turn it round, turn it round, turn it round. Yeah. Oh. Power is free. Oh. This is our country. We must win it back. This freewheeling crime spree, we must all attack. That illegal weapon of which you know could spell oblivion for you tomorrow. Look, that criminal we have, that we call friend or brother, could become like Judah for you tomorrow. As the record death list unfolds, as crime creates a dark hole, don't answer whom the bell tolls. It tolls for no. From pauper to business tycoon, no one is safe or immune. So resolve this crisis, bring back values to TNT. Oh, TNT. Here we come. TNT. We have to beat a different drum. I've heard up singing dead songs, dead hymns for your sons. Oh, TNT. Come let me turn it round, turn it round. TNT. Here we come. Oh, TNT. I want to beat a different drum. I want to sing a glad song, a happy song for your sons. Oh, TNT. Come let me turn it round. TNT. Here we come. TNT. We We are to beat a different drum. I want to sing a merry song, a happy song for your son. Come with me, G and G. Come let me turn it around. G and G, G and G. Here we come, here we come, G and G. We are to beat a different drum. I want to win it back. This freewheeling crime spree, we must all attack that illegal weapon of which you know could spell oblivion for you tomorrow. Look, that criminal we have, that we call friend or brother, could become like Judah for you tomorrow. As the record deathless unfolds, as crime creates a dark hole, don't answer whom the bell tolls. It tolls for no, from pauper to business tycoon, no one is safe or immune. So resolve this crisis, bring back values to TNT. TNT, oh TNT, here we come. TNT, we are to beat a different drum. I've heard up singing dead songs, dead hymns for your sons. Oh, TNT, come let me turn it round, turn it round. TNT, here we come. Oh, TNT, I want to beat a different drum. I want to sing a glad song, a happy song for your sons. Oh, TNT, come let me turn it round. TNT, TNT, here we come, TNT, we are to beat a different drum. I want to sing a merry song, a happy song for your sons. Come with me, TNT, come let me turn it round. TNT, TNT, here we come, TNT, we are to beat a different drum. I want to sing a happy song, a merry song for your sons. Oh, TNT, come let me turn it round, TNT, here we come. Oh, here we come. TNT, we are to beat a different drum. I want to sing a glad song, happy song for your son. Oh, TNT, come let me turn it around. TNT, TNT, oh TNT, oh here we come. TNT, we are to beat that.
And I sing in Sancho there. We got to turn it around. The violence in our community, zeroing in on the violence in our community and our Guyana. Violence on the roadways, violence, domestic violence, violence all over in the society. And no society is going anywhere if it cannot deal with violence. And we want to focus on that. You can't have a developed society with the level of violence that we've seen in the society. Conventional wisdom is that a lot of the violence emanates from the conditions, the economic conditions in the community. Poverty breeds that violence. There's also the question of example. You know, people look and see what's happening at the top in the society, and you know, they take the cue from that. And we know at the top of our society, all is not well. All kinds of things we are hearing emanating from the top echelons of the society, and it's having an impact down below. So, the combination of poverty, and bad example from the top of the society, and it is lots of violence in the Guyanese society. Lots of violence. The roadways. I notice there are now letters in the newspaper every day talking about, but it's been going on forever. It's been going on forever. When policemen and women are forced to take bribes because you don't pay them properly, then people feel that they can break the law on the road and just pay a bribe and get away with it. Pay a bribe and get away with it. And all kinds of lawlessness are being condoned by this government. And the majority of policemen and women are good men and good women, but there's always that minority. And they're allowed to get away with it. The PPP, they would condemn something. Oh, the PNC bad, the PNC, riggers, and the rig election, the this, the that. And then they will take the worst of the PNC into their ranks. There's a lot of theory on that. My theory on that, is that they believe that some people are meant to be bad and they don't mind if I bring some bad egg in my ranks, so long as they don't wield the power, we can have them as the enforcers, because that's how naturally they are. But anyhow, I think we have Mr. GHK Lall with us now after some hit and miss, hits and misses. I think Mr. Lall is with us now, so let's go straight into the interview tonight. Brother Gabriel, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Yes, and I know we had some hiccups, but we are here, and we are ready to roll. Let's start and get in your thoughts on what is the enduring news story for the last couple of weeks, and that is the visit of the Gladstones to Guyana, and it has really raised a number of related issues. It has put on the table the issue of slavery, and whether in fact as a society we've paid enough attention to how defining that system was. It has raised the question of reparations. It has raised the question of the comparison between slavery and indentureship. It has raised the question of apologies and the value of apologies from slave masters. And at the end of the day, it has brought into focus that question which we try to dodge all the time. And that is the question of race. I mean, the question of race relations in our country. So with that introduction, your general thoughts on the visit of the Gladstones.
Well, it's always good evening, everyone, and good to be here. And we hope that whatever is shared, it stimulates, foments some thinking on our part, introduces some new movement, some progress from where we seem to be stuck. It's good. Let's start on a positive note. It's good that a Gladstone descendant can come to Guyana. Family members can come here and say, we are sorry. That's a good thing, but it's only a start. It's only the first minuscule step in a long process. It took the Gladstones or whoever thinks like them a long time, 2 centuries to get here. 2 centuries after 1823, Demerara Rebellion, and by a fellow named a Cooper by the name of Gladstone. And I'm not going to lecture anybody on that. I'm just a beginner in that knowledge. But the fact that it was essayed is encouraging to me. It's inspiring to me. But now we go to the issues beyond apologies. First of all, let me make clear where I stand on this comparison, this equivalency between slavery and indentureship. Indentureship was problematic. It was horrible, but it still does not compare, my fellow Guyanese. It does not begin to compare with slavery. So let's get that on the table and off the table right away. One of the phrases that came out from William Ewart Gladstone, Prime Minister of Great Britain, who had a gradual transformation, being the son of a slave master, he said that slavery, his words, the vilest crime committed in the entirety of human history. So he's not telling, well, they got some like this and some close to this. It was the vilest crime. And I think I have those exact words of Prime Minister Gladstone close to as accurate as it should be. So I hear this interest and this struggle mainly from people like me or who look like me saying indentureship is as bad or was as bad as slavery. Nonsense. Nonsense. With due respect to my ancestors and all the other ancestors of people, of Guyanese Indians today, there's no comparison. There's no comparison. And I think we've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to be honest with ourselves there. I hope I haven't stirred a hornet's nest there, but we've got to say these things as they are. Reparations. Before reparations, another hot button issue, David. There's another word that came before, compensation. And the compensation mechanism that was introduced after the abolition of slavery was in itself a crime. My brother, it was itself a crime when the British government took 40% of its national budget and gave the criminals. So the criminals were compensated, and the victims were thrown out on their derriere. Fend for yourself. Be up to your own devices. So we had this thing in reverse order, and the Gladstone, his father, was the biggest beneficiary with 106,000 plus pounds sterling. I think I'm seeing it saying $10 million today. That doesn't sound right to me. 83 million sounds more apt. But regardless what it was, the people who perpetrated this crime were rewarded for their loss of property or loss of assets, so to speak. But the people who were victimized and brutalized, they got nothing. And and I don't want to introduce this controversial particular into the conversation, but when the indentured servants came, the Africans were kicked out of the plantations that they were on. The free Africans said, "Get out of here now. We've got to make space for these people." So again and again, I say, unless we have the hard conversations and look each other in the eye, as uncomfortable as they make us, we're going to get nowhere. So we come to this issue of reparations. We've got to stop hemming and hawing. We have got to stop dodging and vacillating and being disingenuous. You know, you were kind enough to invite me to share in Buxton, and one of the stream of words that came from you has resonated with me and stuck with me. I knew it, but I didn't know the discrete, the finite detail that you brought it down to. That there was 200 plus years of free labor by the slaves, your ancestors and others, and not a penny. So why are we talking? Why are we having a question about reparations today? Why is there pushback? Why is there one further day of delay about this burning issue? Reparations should be a non-issue. In other words, let us get a mechanism in place to measure. To measure. Remember, I said we've got to go beyond apologies. Apology is lovely. Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Gladstone family. But here's this: give us something. Give us what is fair and equitable. To nothing can nothing can make up for those who had to jump overboard, forever lost at sea. Nothing can bring that back or compensate for that anguish. What we're saying, however this is calculated, computed, formulas, etc., we must get to that stage through, I don't know, the United Nations, through groups. If this were to be like IDPADA G in Guyana, some with some new name, with the appropriate people there, this can't go to government. If reparations money, this cannot go to any government. Let's get this clear. But we've got to get to the reparations mentality first, that this has got to happen, and it's got to happen soon. After 200 years, we shouldn't be talking about reparations anymore. It should be happening. It should be signed on the dotted line, and the agreement is binding, and this is the quantum of what it is going to be, and this is how the process and the procedures are going to work. Reparations must come alive. It's come alive for all those people who are now dead and gone, and who have paid in blood and in pain. So I know, I exhort those who are listening and who can apply pressure that this issue of reparations must not be allowed to become a back burner one. It must not be allowed to be secondary, shoved aside and then come back, and then competing issues intervene. No, no. Reparations must be front burner, must be first order, and it must be pressed and pressed and pressed until something gives. Until something gives. I think that's only fair. I think it's long delayed, and I think it's got to happen. And there has to be that groundswell to push this to happen, or it's never going to happen. We're not going to. Black black people must not wait another century post apologies from anybody and still be talking about reparations then.
GHK Lall introducing us here tonight, quite profound words, and I just want to add that yes, we should not be quarreling about reparation. It should be a natural outgrowth of nationhood. And let me make it very clear. I think each group in our society, each ethnic group, has a right to ask for compensation for their hurt. Each group has a right. I cannot argue for compensation for East Indians. They have to make that case themselves. I cannot argue for Amerindians, they have to make their case. Africans, I'm arguing, the case has already been made by 200 years of unpaid labor. There's not a case to be made. And that is the differentiation. It doesn't mean that East Indians don't have a case of compensation for indentureship. I think, they do, but they have to make their case. The argument here is don't make a case by saying indentureship was the same as Africans. The African case has already been made by the uniqueness of that system. And one of the unique features of that system was that those who work did not get a penny.
Slavery is in a category all by itself.
All by itself.
Yeah, all by itself.
All by itself. Mm-hmm. I think one can make a case of compensation for indentureship.
Yes.
Yes, but it
a very strong case.
Yes,
yeah,
very strong case. But it cannot be made, or should not be made, by comparing it to slavery. I think there should be an acknowledgement by all groups in Guyana. Slavery is unique, and that case has already been made. Those of us who were partially paid, who were paid little, but at least we were paid, we were not a chattel, we have a case to be made, and we are going to make that case based on our circumstances. And I think that's a very just and national way of going about this issue. We must be able to make the case of compensation without fighting each other. GHK Lall.
As you're speaking, and very passionately, this thought occurred to me. If Africans cannot get or come closer or closest to reparation, then who will get? So therefore, it behooves, it's imperative that the other East Indians, Portuguese, whomever, Chinese, that also have a very, very strong claim, but not as strong as the Africans. It is in their interest to rally behind the African claim for reparation, because when that falls in place, then they now start, they're in a stronger position to say, we are next in line. We are here. Yes.
Yeah. And I want to say a couple of things before we move on to the next topic. Because of emancipation, African emancipation from enslavement, it meant that those who came afterwards did not come as chattel. They couldn't. The law changed. Even if they wanted to bring them as chattel, they just couldn't because the law had changed. That's one. Two, your case, therefore, is that if you begin to have reparations for Africans, then it strengthens the case of other groups in the society. And I want to give a practical example. You lived in the United States for a while. When the civil rights movement opened up opportunities in the political economy and the education system for African Americans, when African Americans got Black studies in universities, once African Americans got Black studies, it then became easy to get women's studies, to get Hispanic studies, to get Asian American studies, to get gay and lesbian studies. It was Black studies that opened that door, all right? And then it's no accident that once Black Americans began to make some gains on civil rights, quickly Hispanic Americans began to make gains on civil rights. Native Indians began to get claims on civil rights. Women civil rights began to expand. And so therefore, if one studies history and one admits to the naked fact of history, then it becomes easy to build a multi-ethnic, a multi-group movement for civil rights and justice and reparations. And reparations is a civil and human rights issue.
Glad you brought that up. Here's this, and this is the proper forum for me to say what I'm going to say next, because you brought up the Black civil rights movements of the 50s and the 60s as spearheaded by Dr. King. Through his efforts and men like Abernathy and the others, things culminated in the Civil Rights Act of 1965. And because of that, or embedded in that, were provisions not just for Black people, Black Americans, but so people like me could have ended up in America.
Yes.
So when we go to Richmond Hill and Little Guyana, my brothers, if it weren't for the Black civil rights struggle, the door would have been shut in our faces. So here, this is not abstraction. This is what a provision that was made possible by people in Selma and in Greensboro, North Carolina, and their movements, etc., at the World War Congress, their efforts that led to 1965 passage of that Civil Rights Act in Congress. And I think I got the year right.
1964.
64.
The Voting Rights Act was 1965.
64. Good. Thank
Yes.
you. So because of that, the immigration provisions in there enabled people outside of Europe to enter into the land of milk and honey. And I am certainly a beneficiary speaking about that. And those who are in Richmond Hill and in Brooklyn and in Atlanta, the situation is that you are there because of those who were there in the 50s and the 60s.
That's right. That's right. I mean, there's evidence of a wave of migration from the Caribbean, from Africa, from Latin America and Asia after the passage of the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act. My mother came to America in 1969, and the whole set of people from our village, even if I didn't live in another part of, I didn't know what was happening in Guyana and the West Indies and Latin America. In my village, as a boy growing up, I knew that there was migration by a critical mass of villagers in the late 60s and early to mid 1970s. And so you're quite right in that observation, Ms. borne out by the evidence, the great migration from places like the Caribbean came as a result of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So I think if we in Guyana were to get off of our partisan horses and just study and follow the flow of history, all of us can get reparations. All of us, we just have to admit some salient facts, and one of that is that slavery was in a class by itself. Hence, repairing from the effects of slavery has to be in a class by itself. And you made a point that I want to, repeat, and that is reparations can be handled by the state. Maybe, I don't know, in states where Africans make up the largest chunk of the population, 19% Africans, maybe they can take that risk. But in our society that is so multi-ethnic, where control of the state is ethnically governed, then we can't have the state because our state has not yet shown that it can be a just state for all of the ethnic groups at the same time. You see, our state has not demonstrated that maturity. And so therefore, I think your point is so welcome, right? And I would say that about even the state in the the societies that are monoliths like Jamaica and Barbados and Antigua that are 90-something% Black. Those states, while they may reflect Blackness in the sense that the people who run the state are Black in pigmentation, in terms of the way those states have treated poor Black people, I think it disqualifies them from distributing reparations, because they are going to distribute reparation funds to the upper class of Africans and not to the majority. So I think none of the states in our Caribbean has demonstrated the maturity, the equitability culture to be trusted to take reparations resources and distribute them fairly. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I think that point that you made about not trusting the state is central to our discourse on reparations. I think you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. We're still not hearing you.
If you remember, I was very careful and I was very specific. I said any government,
Yes.
and that includes black governments.
Yes.
Because reparations money, in and of itself, given the number of people involved, is going to be a decent figure, and that figure can be tempting to, I don't care what color government you got, Indian, black government, no, don't let go in government hand. Let go in the people hand, some organization hand, and with checks and balances and the appropriate mechanism, and we could go from there.
Yeah, yes. Our reparations money may go to Exxon. the way we are, because in many respects, that oil that is being pumped out of that ocean, and you made reference of our foreparents whose bones are buried at the bottom of that ocean. In many regards, that oil that is coming out there is a form of reparation. Is a form
they're not fossil fuel. That's human fuel.
It's a form of reparation. And what we see, what this government is doing with the wealth that is coming from that, and we're not sure that any successor government that is going to do different, because as I said, I do not think the state in Guyana and our Caribbean has matured enough to act in a just way. And so I take your point. Brother, let's go. I read, as I do, I read your columns, and I read your column last night. I tend to read newspapers at night. They come up. The online version, Kaitro News, comes up at 9 o'clock where I live. Stabrook News comes up at 11 o'clock. And I read your column on the PPP's response to the suggestion by the American ambassador that America can play a mediatory role between the PPP and the PNC, and by extension between our two major ethnic groups, and the PPP's rejection of it. And you posit an interesting thesis that I had not given much attention. So I had to read your column twice, because I did not instinctively go where you've gone. And you argue in that column that the PPP feels that it doesn't need America anymore. And I had not arrived there. I had initially said they were rejecting the Americans partly because they wanted to push to see how far they can get away with, and I still believe that is true. And that they were merely playing games and hoping that the Americans will go away. But then I read your thesis, and that is that you're arguing that they may well feel that they don't need the Americans anymore. So I want you to expand on that tonight, because I found that fascinating. Partly because, like I said, many of us have not gone there, because we would ask ourselves, are they crazy? How can you feel you don't need the Americans anymore? All right? But one thing you can't call the PPP people, their leaders. You can call them many things, but they're not crazy, especially when it comes to political calculations. Over to you.
go back to the word you used, I think, a couple of times when we were talking about reparations money, which has to do with maturity.
Yeah.
So now you're saying these guys aren't crazy, and crazy is not the word. But I think somewhere in that writing, and I write so much now of recent that it's a blur. I spoke about, I may have mentioned the word hubris. The
Yes.
hubristic is taken care here. Because if you notice the contrast 3 years later versus 2020, there are some of us in this country, few of us, who say, let us sit across from each other, around in the same room, around the same table, and hash out. It's not going to be one day and 1 year, but we're going to make progress inch by inch by inch. And we go with it with not only maturity, but sincerity, authenticity. In 2020, 2019, 2020, nothing we can do, but as the PNC said, or the PPP has got a long history of that. We're going to reach for the international community. And when we talk international community, we really mean the Americans. You're not talking about Canada, due respect. So you're reaching for this international community, which is really the United States of America. And everybody from the common troops to the brain trust to the leadership, they made sure that they were intricately entangled with the Americans in the 3 years ago. And they got where they wanted. They got to the promised land, free and fair and democracy and return to power. And the people have been talking about China, and I walked out, and inclusion repeatedly. Blinken did it. Sarah Ann Lynch did it several times. And I'm pretty sure Kamala Harris did it.
Yes, she did it.
Inclusion, diplomatic speak, subliminal messages. And I get broadsides here. And so the idea here is you guys need to be speaking to each other. And the president, and so I am going to help you. I have helped you every step along the way to get to where you are. To get to where you are. And when I come on this one issue, which is the biggest issue in this country, putting heads together so that we can work shoulder to shoulder. You're going to tell me, don't use the language that I used then about get lost. You're going to tell me, we'll take a hike. We don't need you anymore. We can handle this ourselves, and we're gonna push forward ourselves because we've got what it takes. We are capable. Listen, the PPP is nothing without the USA. I put that on the table now. It's nothing without America. Spurns the US now by insulting its outgoing ambassador, a woman who has done yeoman service, a woman who I've called out. I have called out my fellow Americans till I heard from you that some of the fellas, I really don't want to know who they are, said I am anti-American. I'm exercising that great American attribute of speaking against the grain. But she has done her work here, and she said, I will do some additional work, even if it means I'm reading this, even if I have to delay my upcoming work. She's been here 5 years. I think the diplomatic tour is 3. Normally it's 3 years.
Yeah.
But obviously exigencies of the circumstances here, such she had to stay another 2. So she is offering, and obviously in consultation with the State Department, see if you could get them banner for fix themselves. See if you could get them for talk. At least let them begin the conversation. And our president, he responded as he did. Because I think there's this hubris now within the PPP. We've got the institutions that matter under control. Therefore, we can roll over the PNC. Well, the PNC can decide if it wants to take rollover. And I know they're looking at me because every time the Honorable Vice President, our brother, has a press conference, a little stupid man like me just spend a lot of time talking about what's wrong with the guy. This is a new era in this country. You worried about a one commentator, one letter writer, one columnist, roll in one. He should have to see what writing the Catholic standard, but God and country and fidelity, he can get religion then. Now here's the story. I think genuinely the PPP, somebody can talk to the president, but genuinely the PPP believe we don't need America anymore. For political, we need them for financing and maybe engineering and exim and wherever the people them name, right? But in terms of political difficulties and differences, you stay out of that. That's a domestic matter. That's a family matter, right? But I disagree with His Excellency. Since we have made it our culture, and I disagree with it strongly. We have made it our culture that everything we pick up the phone, we need the United Nations here. We need CARICOM here. We need the OAS here. Good Lord, can we do anything for ourselves? We can't humble ourselves. We cannot have the maturity and the statesmanship and the leadership to say, Mr. PNC or Mr. PPP, here's the story. The government has to take the initiative on this, not the opposition. You know what I told somebody the other day, and I'm going to repeat this wherever I go for the next several things, God willing. Here's this. You know how we dealing in this country? We're in this 21st century, and we're supposed to be looking ahead, whether you make one step or the other. And you know what we're doing to one another? How the PPP government is leading? It's looking backward. It heading forward. It thinks it's heading forward, but it's looking backward. Every time you hear, 1960, Barnum. Look, it happened. You struggle against it. Others struggle against it. So you are a living example of that. But when you're going forward now in this isle country, you're looking backwards at 1960. And then now, the other ploy you got is as you take a step, you're looking sideways. 2019, 2020. 2019, 2020. How are you gonna focus your energy when you're looking so backwards at 1960 and sideways at 2020? Come on, we got to get real here. We've got to summon the energy. We've got to summon the intellectual powers. We've got to summon more than the perspicacity. We've got to summon the sagacity. Sorry for those big words. We got to summon the common sense that here we need each other. We can't do without each other, and we are better with each other. Yeah. But we can get into the state. We tell ourselves here, we don't need them no more. We could deal without the PNC. We could run this country by ourselves. I think somebody fooling themselves. Somebody lying to themselves. Somebody lying to themselves. And because what has happened, when you got people going to jump at you, try to pigeonhole you as a racist, right? Try to pigeonhole you as a racist. Maybe they said it's a PNC program. They always like to do these things because they're not speaking to the issue, they're speaking to their audiences. They're trying to ram home a point over and over again. But aside from that, we can get all the oil money in the world. Even if exams say, hey, take a couple of percentage points more. But if we can't fix our political and racial issues, my sisters and brothers, wherever you are in the diaspora or in Guyana, we ain't going nowhere. A few will benefit, and the rest can sit down at the end there and say, well, this thing is going to have to come to an end sometime, or we're going to have to take matters in our own hands. We're going to bring out then the SWAT team. We're going to bring out some special forces. And, history has taught us this in different places. Men who were deeply and impregnably and unconquerably entrenched. Look at Saddam Hussein. Yeah, you can tell me you're bringing the United States and all that, but people were undermining him for a long, long time. The society was he locked down this and he locked down that. The Shah of Iran did that, and then some men in praying to God knock you out. That's the bottom line. You get the right kind of leadership, passionate, dedicated, etc., and you get to that place where you regret saying that we don't need you anymore. You have used you have used these people to your advantage. You got the numerical advantage in all of that, according to you. And you still need A, B, C, E, U, O, A, S. Hear this thing. You don't need them now. Suddenly you have outgrown everybody else. Suddenly you're smarter than everybody else. You're the smartest guy in the room, as we like to say on Wall Street. That's one of the things we used to do. Who's the smartest guy in the city? Right? You're looking for BT up, right? This is what is happening with the PPP. It has become too full of itself. And it tells itself, we got all of this and we got all of that. And we have all this control. We will roll everybody into the dust. They think this is cricket. We're going to get the groundsman, they're the groundsman. They're going to roll all the way into the pitch. Here, I have said to people, they ask me, they say, frighten these people. They say here, when people sick, I used to tell them, I do that for 2 years. I go and visit sick people. I said, this is when you got to be strong. This is when all them things you read in the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran. This is when you must be at your strongest. Lord, all my belief that I've placed in you, this way. So here, if they think, any one of them say that they're going to deal with this man, or how much are we going to knock down? How much are we? How much are we going to chase away? Look, Barnum tried this, and he had the thing, and he had the control, and things changed. These banners should have learned something from that. They really ought to have learned something from that. The total control that is characteristic of communist states. We got it here, but we got a nice capitalist flavor with it, right?
GHK Lall. And GHK, let me just support what you're saying, the political historian in me. In 1992, Carter came, he brokered an agreement. The PPP benefited from that agreement. 10 years later, Carter left Guyana, wringing his hand, and finished with that country because the PPP did the same thing that they're doing now to Sarah and Lynch. They basically tell Carter, that thing what we promised you in 1992 about power sharing, we changed our mind, we're not dealing with that anymore. And they basically said to Carter the same way he left there, said that the PPP betrayed him. And they're doing the same thing to these Americans again. You see, what happened when Carter left? Within 10 years, they were out of power. And apparently, they have not learned that lesson. And they're doing the same thing again. So you're correct. This is part of the DNA of the PPP, that in many regards, it defies political logic as we see it. But it comes from the political logic of the PPP that they've gotten in their minds dating back to the 1960s. We shall see. We shall see where this goes. At the same time, the PPP is telling Sarah Lynch where to get off. Nigel Hughes at the Coffee 250 Forum raises again the question of power sharing. This time he said, let's have a supermajority in parliament. It means that if you were to have a supermajority, we have to have consensus to pass very important bills in the parliament. Before the thing had come out of the man's mouth. And the Lall said, no, they want power through the back door, followed by our friend, Mr. Jagdeo, and so on. So here you have telling the Americans, don't worry on your inclusiveness, telling Nigel Hughes, don't worry with no power sharing. Is that an accident that they had the same response to those two initiatives almost simultaneously?
Well, you know, from the time I heard Nigel say that, I could have plotted the answer, and I didn't need to be quarter of the writer or thinker that I think I am. I could have plotted the answer through the back door, the side door. Every time the PPP and power just come up, it don't come up. You know, look, and I expected Mr. Nandalal to lead the chorus, and quickly followed by our brother and friend Barrett Jagdeo. Now, listen, it might sound trite. Where there's a will, there's a way. We ain't giving the thing a chance. Everybody saying, well, it never walk here, and it didn't. What Nigel is saying, in very specific instance, this supermajority is what is going. Somebody gonna filibuster the thing, but if we study other systems, and put in a mechanism, a machinery in place, and we put in an appropriate machinery in place with different decision points and escalation points and control points. And then we say, beyond this point, here is what's going to happen. We're not going to debate this thing forever. We're not going to hang up the government, because that's a nice selling point. It can cause anarchy and chaos, and it's a recipe for bottlenecks, and my words, and so on and so forth. Here's this. I come back to this point. You got whatever number the demographics are, I am not interested. The PPPs in power. You got half the electorate out there. Half the electorate outside this studio here. This little studio where me and you there, a black man and an Indian man. Two American citizens who don't have to pay attention to Guyanese interests, Guyanese issues. But there's nothing closer to our hearts. And I know self-recommendation. I could write two books now, you know. One as an immigrant, one about the immigrant experience, and one about Wall Street. And I don't have to consult with my notes. But I'm dealing with local issues. Here's the thing. So you got the economics and you got the institutions. Here's the, how long is that gonna last? When half the electorate out there looking at you, or you looking at me and say, he living like a tycoon, a Isle tycoon, and I there next door living like some local terrorist. He is a magnate, a commercial magnate, and I is a street monster. That's what it comes down to. In raw terms, I either have the lack of dignity, the lack of self-respect, that I will surrender my manhood to that forever. That mean and teach me children about that. Something's got to be wrong with, I don't know, somebody got to help me in the sociology or the something going on, that you're going to think that a system that perpetuates that kind of inequity and that kind of imbalance, that kind of unfairness, those multiplicity of injustices, you're going to tell me that that's going to be held in perpetuity? Somebody mad. I'm going to take up your word now. Somebody is stark, staring, crazy. And it's not me. In this instance, it's not me. Because I hear this. How long this? I mean, come on. Everything we got here, some escalation. We're gonna have to report this to the international authorities. Good for you, brother. Let me fix the thing myself now. Let me roll up my sleeve and get my shoes muddy, take off my shoes, throw off my shoes, right? And let me sit down and say, look at each other, and everything comes back to this: the economics, the politics, the electoral system. You know, I am in a position of authority. You know, all them foreign helpers coming, I say, here, we're gonna need you for technical assistance. But you know, this job owning, it gotta be me and the man down there, and he and our teams. In other words, this is a local matter. This is a domestic, this is a domestic situation. We're going to have to deal with this on our terms. We know we history. We know we culture. We know our passions. We know our expectations. We know our realities. Therefore, the best people, the best experts for this are the residents here. You can bring in some white man from the United Nations or the State Department to tell me from Foggy Bottom for saying, well, you're going to have to follow these steps to get from A to B. And this is what has worked in Norway and Ireland and here. They have value, but they ain't got nobody know we circumstances, our environment better than us. Me in live here for 31 years, and I think I know it better than anybody who come in here. Remember what I'm saying. We need them for technical expertise, for guidance over bottleneck. But at the end of the day, we got to be honest with ourselves. Half of we people, how much people you going to buy? How much people you going to buy? Look at what things come down to now. Look at what things come down to in this country. We would have local people, Guyanese brothers and sisters would listen to a man like me, excuse me, and say, is what you talking about? I'm saying we should twist Exxon's arm. We should really say there are people hungry out there, and this what we getting is not enough to do more for them. Suddenly now, I become the man not to be trusted for asking some. Imagine a man, an Exxon man, whether it's Routledge or Jackson or whoever, or our fellow Guyanese Grimm, right? That, believe it or not, we got these Guyanese in these positions, and I become the bad guy, and they are the men in the white hat.
Yeah.
I mean, how does this be when I am screaming out the pain of my people? How can this be real? That I got me fellow Guyanese attacking me. Look, I don't care what they say. I don't even know who they are. And they have a right to do so. They have a right to do so. But look at what this thing boiled down to, David. You and I having this program here. Let me left out reparation. There's international. We're talking about sitting at the same table, Sarah Ann Lynch. We're talking about Nigel Hughes and supermajority. Supermajority, yes, is 60%. I didn't agree with 60. I think I'll be 66%. So you don't want to charandas again, make so and broke up the thing. But if we go with sincerity and a determination, we can lock up all we in this room and throw away the key. And after a while, we start bringing in bread and water in here. So until we could come to a decision, we ain't going out here. It might sound ordinary, but if we really want to bring about some changes in this thing, I think supermajority has its place. For specific, definitely, look what happened to the oil money. $607 million US take out. I don't know if they take out all, but this year that they were supposed to, they still have some left. Here's this. How much, why we got so much hungry people in this place? Stabrook News sees the opportunity in chapter 39 of its cost of living thing and talk to shows from different villages, and the place big down there. Every one of those 11 people holler, price is high, we struggling, we need help. That's just a miniaturization of the people that are hurting in this country. So we need that supermajority where even if I feel in the strain, whether as a black man or as an Indian man, I feel that both of my people are representing they're there and they're looking out for we. But when they ain't got nobody other than, some tokens, I'm going to say riffraff, but what was that? Some tokens. Then the people stop listening to you. They say, you know what? The game joke, the card mark. So the dealer there on their side. So it doesn't matter. So you're not giving yourself a chance to register as being genuine. Supermajority, power sharing, no. Consensus, no. This only happens when the PPP is in power. I always say this, since the PPP is so holy, it should not be comparing itself to what the PNC did.
That's right.
They make the PNC the devil here. And the PPP is so saintly, should not be compared. Say, okay, they did that. But we are going to go to this level and this level. We are going to take the first step on all that business. Here's something. I'll get this example. I know we're running tight with time. Here's this. Remember Bill Clinton left surplus money? The Bush boy come in and he manufacture, what do you call the thing again? Mass destruction weapons.
Mhm.
I get a black man for go along with it, call him Powell.
Well, yes.
They had wars in the nights and the Vulcan crowd was again a black woman in there. Condoleezza Rice was part of the
Yes.
crew, and Armitage and Rumsfeld and whoever, they're steamrolling. So you got to think. They declare war, they burn out the surplus money, put the country in debt. So me and you paying, got to feel the tax squeeze. Hear the story. Do you hear the Americans still harping about how much Clinton left or how much Bush knocked down? No. No, we got to grow up. That is what I'm saying. We have got to grow up. Everything can be 1960 and Bonham and 2020 and Granger. Let's get past that. So when I hear a Nigel who's come up with, he's working out not for getting power by the back, but what's going to work where all of our people feel we have a finger on the pulse of the nation. We have something in the hand from this spy, right? As opposed to when you feel like it, you're going to drop something from the head. Supermajority or whatever construction that we come up with, at least let there be some sort of receptivity. Give the thing a hearing. Give the thing a hearing instead of saying, no, we don't want to hear about that. If the demographic trends, and here the embassy in front, I live close to it, right? The American embassy is mainly one kind of people ganging up in front there, right? Daily. There's a drain. You can bring them back, and who gonna go there and stay overstay? They gonna come back. Hear my story. The numbers are dwindling. So I want to know, you can still not we ain't talking about the thing and the back door and all them kind of business. That's where they. Let me give these things a try.
Let's give these things a try. And talking about Nigel Hughes and Royce Ford are slated to be here on Friday night. Both of them introduced Article 15 in the Constitution, which says that the state shall intervene if any group in the society feels aggrieved, if it feels cheated, my words, that, Royce Ford introduced it at the Buxton Symposium, yes, and Nigel Hughes introduced it at the Coffee to 50. And the man whose idea it was and who drafted that article in the Constitution heard both presentations and called me and reminded me that he had told me who drafted, and he's going to be on. I'm not telling you all who it is, right? But he's going to be on the program to talk about the history of that Article 15. And Nigel Hughes and Royce Ford are going to expand on that, which Nigel describes to me in a private email as a nuclear weapon that we have discovered in the Constitution. That is there. It says that the state shall intervene. And it was not confined just to ethnic groups, it's also to women and religion. Any group that feels aggrieved, the state shall intervene. So we're going to have Nigel Roysdale and the person whose brainchild and who drafted that article in the Constitution. And it came about during the constitutional reform process 20 years ago. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Eric Phillips, the head of the Guyana Reparations Committee, the live wire behind the visit of the Gladstones and the apologies. He's going to be here to talk to us about what went on behind the scenes. So tomorrow night, Eric Phillips. Friday night, Nigel Hughes, Royce Ford, and the author of Article 15 in the Constitution. It's a surprise for you all. when you all find out who is the person whose brainchild and who drafted Article 15 in the Constitution. Brother Lall, both the government and the opposition have said that they're wary of Venezuelan intelligence people being here in Guyana. What do you make of that?
Well, at least I'm delighted to hear that they have some sort of commonality on an issue in this country. When's the last time you heard something about the PPP saying one thing and the PNC saying the other thing? Government opposition. Because as soon as one takes to something, no, the other one take the other tack. And it's heartening that there can be this weariness, and I think it's legitimate in terms that if I am a Venezuelan leader, defense minister, whatever, don't go as high as the president. We've got all this activity going on here and all this economic development boom from oil wealth that they're claiming is theirs. I would want to have my assets on the ground to gather intelligence and to be sleepers for potential disruption down the line should we need to go escalate matters to that level. Now, these are the things I'm talking about. Racial, historical, and present racial issues, our national security issue, our oil economics, our oil needs in terms of expertise and technicals and holding a joint joining strengths to confront our foreign partners and say, look, we represent the Guyanese people, there's some of them, and something's got to give here. These are the crucial issues in our society. Race and politics, which is one. National security, meaning border, that's two. Economics, three. Because from the economics, the sociology and social work and the medical and the education will follow. Now, I would really like to see the two of them. Yeah, they were coming from different, they agreed that, look, we need to have our eyes opened here. But beyond the talking, what is going to happen? Let me take the same issue. If we've got an escalation, God forbid, of tensions with Venezuela, what's going to happen now? Them people who don't getting all the economic benefits, they're going to put on war boots and go at the border. No, it's a real question. We have an escalation of tensions with our neighbors, hopefully not. And it's serious. It's beyond saber rattling and the people don't think. And yes, I know that's part of the insurance premium we pay in Exxon for America for the Venezuelan protection. But let me see some madman over there decide, and they're already here, Sindicato and the border tongues and all of that. Here's this. Here's a strong presence. I would have that as a Venezuela here. And we would be irresponsible if we don't recognize that we have this internal threat here. We have this fifth column, foreign fifth column in crucial areas, whether under the cover of illegal migrants or we don't even know how many Venezuelans we have in this country. We don't know that. We have a guess. It should be 10,000, but I think it's more like 30, 40,000. That's being conservative. I mean, that's 5%. All right? Yes, that's about 5% of your population, 4 or 5%. That's a strong force. Yeah. So I go back to this question. So if we have got right now, we don't want to talk to one another. No, the government don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to hear people like me. This color talking what we're talking about here tonight. So here's the story. We have a problem with Venezuela. All them people who collecting them big money and driving them duty-free car, God bless them. They're going to abandon them and go at the border and decide, oh, we are drawing a line here, not one step further. Are they going to do that? And that's not a rhetorical question. They're left for one set, they're left for a set of people. So why they got to beg for a handout, or beg for fairness? We have a real threat, but I fuse in the economics with it too. I fuse in the politics with it. I fuse in the leadership into it. And these are not bargaining chips or nice things to talk about. These are our realities. And we've got some Achilles heels here. And we need to get sensible, mature again, go back to that word, and genuine, mature and genuine, and say, you know what? By ourselves, PNC or PPP, we can't deal with this. We can't wait for something, blow up and then we're going to holler, well, we are one. We're one and we are united and nobody dare do it. Look, let's get real here. We got a lot of angry people in this country. We got a lot of upset people, impatient people. So I'm glad to see that they're holding ahead here, but they got to go beyond this.
They have to go beyond that. And my brother, you drew to my attention that our friend, the vice president, is challenging Eric Phillips and myself to a debate on black issues. What do you make of that challenge by the vice president?
Well, let me say this. I saw that. And if it's real, if it's not fake, if it's real, I think you folks should give it a chance. Let me interject the personal here. If I don't trust a man, and if I believe his truth is questionable, trust and truth are questionable, I want in the same place with he. But you're going to have to make your decision should this come down. And I think given your prominence and Eric Phillips in black issues, you should seize the opportunity to have that conversation. I cannot say that that the PNC and PPP should have the conversation. And I'm going to tell you that, but you mustn't go and deal with Jagdeo. I think you should. If he reaches out and say, look, we've got disagreements, we're on different sides of the fence and so on. It would be good for us to hash it out and put it on the table. I say you need to go, you and Eric Phillips, who I know fairly well, and you need to go and sit with him and have the conversation. You never know where these things could lead. It's again that first step I talk about. You are going in good faith. Hopefully the vice president, a man not known for good faith, is going to come in good faith, right? I think it's if it's real and the invitation is tendered, you should respond positively. And I would say to him, you've done something good, regardless what comes out of it. But be careful. He has, in my estimation, by my calculation, not picked up, he has taken situations and circumstances and made a merry-go-round out of them. So you're going to have to draw up the ground rules very early of this so-called debate, right? Because he would love to talk. If it's 2 hours, he'd love to talk for 1 hour and 30, right? And when you realize, wait a minute, what are we here, spectators? Good. So you're going to have, I say again for the third, fourth time, I would like to see that development and say, have the conversation. We have to talk. We will disagree. Look, we'll disagree. Me and my best friends disagree. Me and my spouses, and I've had a couple of them over the decades. We have had disagreement. Me and my mother didn't used to see eye to eye, right? We didn't talk for a while. Here's the story. But at the end of the day, we've had the conversation and we understand each other better, and we may have set the stage for another step up the ladder.
Yes, some swift responses here. One says, Dr. Hines and Eric Phillips should not act as gladiators for Jagdeo's amusement. and he still can't debate against Comrade Norton. Uh, very swift responses here. Gabriel, were you surprised when you picked up the newspaper this morning or in the news last night that the police clashed with striking sugar workers at Rosal Turn yesterday? What do
Yeah,
you make of that?
yes or no? Yes, I was surprised, and no, I wasn't surprised. No, because it's part of the continuum of the PPP's quest for we is the boss, we in control, and nobody, we truth must prevail. If we say so is so, I get off the road. So that was the part. The yes part, in terms I was surprised, is like, man, these guys are so hubristic, so
Yes,
haughty,
yes,
that they will go to this length. Colin, who is the banner? Sipal Narayan, or I think is whoever is
yes.
the big cheese. I think it's Mr.
Sibal,
Comrade.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
Sibal. Sibal.
yeah. Here, let's hear the grievances. Don't just try for top down, ram the thing down the people. Them, you know what I mean? There's too much of that. They're not learning from these things. People are hurting here. And they want to deal with politics. They want to deal with their family. They want to deal with their economic shortages. The two shows talk about it. The people in Les Beholden talk about it. The people in Linden talk about it. And their strongholds and they're not in Georgetown. You know, here's the thing. I mean, look, if I were to depend on what's going on here, I I would fill up a whole newspaper in terms of what I would write and think. The thing is, things it's rough. We got hard guava season. The guava gone, the season hard. It's more hard than I find something else. But see some almond nut or something, some turtle shell.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
thing bad, it's hard and it's bad. So really, look, here's let me jump into that for a minute. I see the clock ticking there. Oh, pensioners getting $33,000 a month. Dr. Jagdeo, in his wisdom, comes out and said, you see how we're taking care and how we're doing this? $7,000 in the next 2 years. That's $7,000 a year. But in the next 2 years, you can get a total of 24, 25. So you can go from 33 to 40. Maybe you can get 4 next year and 3 or some other combination. But it's $7,000 in 2 years for deal with what, my brother? What? That's what we could expect in this town. We have look, things hard, things bad, and more has to be done. And I think we need to put our heads together. That's been the constancy in this evening's conversation with our brothers and sisters out there. And you can talk and I can talk, but at the end of the day, the leaders have to really be. Hear this thing, David. I'm gonna tell you this. Some people has asked me a question. They say, "What's a man like you just do down there in this country?" I said, I always ask myself the question sometime. I say, what it's come down to? Warts and all, you've got to love the place. You got to love the people. And once you got there, you're going there. And you're going to manage. And we will be doing these things or contributing in the media or struggling in some way, what is in the church or with somebody, to make for a better society. And that's the ultimate goal, a better society, not for some. I wrote something like this: the haves, they have mores, and they still have more to come, right? But there's only one side, and then you got the rest of them who they're down there saying, "But what about me?" That is what we talk.
yeah.
Look, it's good being here.
Yes. Thank you, GHK. And my goodness, the hubris, you can tell the Americans where to go off, you feel. You can kick out Nigel Hughes's supermajority. You can turn on your own supporters who are
Yeah.
asking for what all trade union
Hmm.
people will ask for. Give me a severance before I can go to a new job. And you
Hmm.
are prepared to go after them to the point where you instruct the police, because we know you instruct the police how to move. I think the hubris there, but I think it's a lesson for the Indian Guyanese community. First they came, you all know that? Eventually they will come for you all. When they put in the police to beat up black people at Moko and whensoever, you all didn't raise your all voice because you all feel it's your all government. You see? And now they come for you. Who's going to raise their voice for you?
Yeah, we're raising it here. We're raising it here.
We are raising it here. The police ought not to brutalize. I mean, there was some restraint in the way they dealt with the people there yesterday. But at the end of the day, they broke up the people march and broke up the people protest. You see? And the right to protest is a sacred right. It's a sacred, and it's not for the police to determine the difference between my right to protest and whether I'm obstructing traffic. That is not for the police to decide. You see? And so therefore, I hope the members of the Indian Guyanese community are seeing, eventually they will come for you. When they're done with we, they will come for you because you are emulating exactly what we have been doing for 3 years. We've been saying they're taking advantage, but we, and you all, for political reasons, I think you all know what we're saying is true. Now you are saying the same thing we're saying, and they turn on you. They turn on you. When black people are protesting in West Bobis, they tell you all, no, they aren't protesting. They were molesting Indian women. They were beating up Indian people, and you all fall for it. And now they turn against you all. Guyanese of all races, the state of any country has a logic of its own. It may discriminate against a group that it feels that it is most threatened by. But ultimately, the state is always threatened by its citizens, no matter if those citizens vote for them. We gone.
Good evening,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you very much for coming through
God bless.
tonight. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to your audience, and you all stay with us right until the end. We got a mouthful tonight. We got a mouthful tonight. And that is why we got to keep doing this. You see that development there with those sugar workers? Don't take it lightly. Comrade Ramjatan went and he talked to those sugar workers and they're shaking in their boots. How can comrades be talking to sugar workers? Look how they knock off sugar workers. And first of all, the sugar workers know what Ramjatan and the coalition were trying to do. They weren't trying to oppress them because they're Indians. That's the narrative the PPP use. But the sugar workers know that what the coalition was trying to do was to reform the industry. They know that the industry is not sustainable. All that. So when Kemraj went and talked to them and they welcomed Kemraj, the PPP surprise. I am not surprised. We are not surprised. The sugar workers are not surprised. Because the sugar workers went along with the PPP narrative that Ramjatan is the enemy. Now Ramjatan go and talking to the sugar workers and advising them what to do. They're trembling in their boots. I'm trying to see if I can get Kemraj here on Thursday. Let me stay with this struggle. I'm telling you all. Let me stay with this struggle. One, the government mouthpiece, Randolph Prasad, going after people like myself. I ain't ready to deal with him yet. The other loquacious one we name again, Freddie Kissoon, wrote in his column yesterday that Professor Nigel Westmus, my WPA comrade, and me should be thrown out of the US universities because we are going to go and tell the US students that elections in Guyana were not rigged. He's writing the syllabus for we. He's writing the syllabus for we. And that the American university should look at us. If we are not effective, why you want we get thrown out of we bread? You all are going to give we work in Guyana, and now you all want to throw we out of bread. What are we doing? No, we know what we're doing. We are mobilizing, we are educating people with the truth, not lies. There's one thing I'm telling you all here. I am not socializing dishonest people. We are socializing a new kind of opposition political activist and supporter. That is an activist and supporter who is informed, who knows the truth, who knows the analysis. That's what we do here, and that's why they're so fearful. When you take somebody like Sister Rhonda, she didn't go to no university. I was talking to a Denamstel person, a friend of mine, I know Rhonda was a WPA. But this is a person who grew up younger than Rhonda. She says she knows she stuff, it always was like that. And she don't frighten trouble. And she has an opinion. This is somebody who's about half Rhonda's age. And that's, she's telling me that about Rhonda. And they're fearing Rhonda. And they're fearing people like Rhonda who come on to these programs and who are teaching us, and we are teaching them. And we are creating a new kind of activist who's not afraid to tell the president and the vice president and all of them where to, they fear that. The greatest boots on the ground is when we fighting them with the ideas and the fearlessness. So David Hines and Nigel Westmus and others like us, we should lose the job. It's not now they're going after me. I got a call at a conference in Jamaica about 10 years ago. They were still back there in power. The head of my department called to ask if I'm okay. And I said, yes, I'm at a conference. I'm on my way back to work. And she said she's just calling to make sure that I'm okay and that I'm not in jail. I said, why? They receive communication from the office of the president of Guyana that I am planning a coup in Guyana. Well, if you work place here, you're planning a coup. People who plan coup to be in jail. So they were, because you know, those of us who work for these universities, they're on their insurance and so on, so they are concerned about us. They've been doing that to me all the time. It's been going on for years, trying to get me to lose my job. You see? And they're at it again. This time, Freddie Kissoon came out and said that me and Nigel Westmus, when we teach Caribbean politics, we will teach the children that the 2020 elections in Guyana were not rigged. He writes in the syllabus. Why do they fear us? They say we don't have support. They say if David Hines run for thing, you're going to get 2 votes. Why the fear? Sisters and brothers, we are doing something that is jamming them, jamming them, jamming them. They're not going to be able to get away with the nonsense about immigration and indentureship is the same as slavery. They're not going to be able to get away with it. They got to get past people like me first, and Eric Phillips and Vincent Alexander. We have enough of us who are not prepared to speak out on those issues. They don't want you like, they don't like to talk about race. But enough of us are prepared now to talk about slavery. And GHK, Lall, an Indian, how dare him? How dare him join with those black people to tell their truth? We jamming them hard, hard. Even dictators, they need ideas to justify their dictatorship. And we are beating them with the ideas. We are beating them with the facts. We are beating them with the history. We are beating them with the analysis. So they got to hire intellectuals. They got hire Freddie Kissoon. Somebody said no match. They got to hire Randy Posada. Somebody said no match. Somebody said Freddie is jealous of your intellect, Dr. Oh, lad. And he just watched the program. Freddie, I want you to hear what the people saying. Because it's not no Kant analysis. You don't hear the evidence coming and say somebody that tell me something in semi-confidence and are using it as political analysis. All the things over the years, Freddie, that you have told me in confidence, you have never heard me repeat them or write them. Can somebody tell me something in confidence or semi-confidence? Unless they give me permission, I am not revealing that. Freddie, your scholarship is gossip. Who sleep with who? And who they hustle who? And who they live with who? Gossip, that's your scholarship. We're not doing that here. We're not doing that here. We're doing real public scholarship here. That's why every night, every single night, people tune into us. And not one of us, two of us, three of us, four of us, five of us. And they're teaching us. We're not just teaching, we are also learning. I've learned so much from this program. And Jagdeo knows that you all are learning. They feel that they can go in and hunt down black people and fool them. But oh God, what Vincent Alexander gonna say and David Hines gonna say, so we gotta fight them down. We are standing between them and any attempt to re-enslave black people. That's what black people invest in us for. That's why you all send me to school and give us the opportunity to go further than many would have gone had they gotten the same opportunity. And that's why we come back to do what we're doing every evening here, helping to mobilize. And it's biting. It's biting them. They're gone after Risedale Ford. They hire the intellectuals. We don't have to hire intellectuals. We generate intellectuals. We generate intellectual conversation. We don't have to hire them. We don't have to hire them. The opposition generates its own public intellectuals. And we don't get paid. We're not on the government payroll or anybody payroll. We do it as an extension of what we do in the classrooms. So Freddie Kissoon, you can continue to try to get us knocked off. And even if you get us knocked off, this work ain't gonna done. We're gonna get more time for this work. Sisters and brothers, be holding them. Be holding them, we're not letting go. All the narratives they're trying to get through with, we're not allowing them to get through. Guyana is changing. We know that. But it's not changing because of the PPP. It's changing despite the PPP. The PPP is not responsible for any of the economic changes and the big GDP that we get. Not the PPP, it's oil. The oil is flowing. It could have been the AFC, the WPA, the PNC in power. We would have got the same GDP growth. And they frighten we because we're going to tell you all exactly that. They like when we tell you all Guyana hasn't changed. No, Guyana is changing. You all understand that. Plenty money is in Guyana. And that money is getting there not because of the PPP, despite the PPP. And that's why we say the issue is what you do with the money. And that money is reparations. It's reparations from God. God put oil there. And God lead me to the aisle. And that reparations money, you're keeping it for you, your friends them. And your elite friends them. And the people who deserve the most, poor people, black people, they're getting the least. So if Europe were to give us reparations, not to government. Black people, not to government. Form your organizations. Strengthen your organizations so that the reparation come to your organizations. Thank God for David Granger. At least he gave a $10 million to it Prodigy. A drop in the ocean, but at least he showed intention. The PPP take away that from black people. And then you want to tell us that you got black people interests at heart. You got to pass with us. You got to pass with us. I don't know about any debate. I can't debate with people who don't know what they're talking about, who ain't got no respect for black people's history and black people's struggle. We first got debate among ourselves as Africans, among ourselves as Indians, among ourselves as Amerindians and Chinese and Portuguese. And that's what I'm saying. Each group must decide its own reparations argument and its own reparations claim. And they must not be in conflict with each other. But we black people ain't gonna make the case anymore. Our case has been made by history. And Indian writers and scholars must say, black people case has been made. We are making a case for indentureship. It is not the same case as slavery because indentureship was different from slavery. Indentured laborers were paid. Indentured laborers kept their names, their religion, their culture. The African enslaved did not. But some of those scholars, you see, they're aware of ancient history. When religious wars against North African civilizations in Nubia, in Egypt, in Ethiopia were fought, captured Africans and took them back to what is now India and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. They took them back there. The women were made concubines and the men were forced to fight in the armies. So whereas the transatlantic slave trade captured Africans and brought them to work on plantations, the Eastern slave trade, well, not trade, the Eastern slave system arose out of the Arabization of North Africa and conquering of Africans and taking them back to Asia, what we call the Eastern Slave Project. So Africans were in Asia and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and Iran and Turkey long before Columbus. Long before Columbus, this stumbles upon the Americas. And that is why black scholars are now arguing that just as Europeans crossed the Bering Straits and came over to the Americans, blacks were in Southern Europe long before the transatlantic slave trade. You all go to the Old Testament, there's black people's story in there. Go to the early writings in the Quran, black people's story in there. The Prophet Muhammad, part of his entourage were black Africans. You see, they don't like me talk that history. And when they took back Africans to what is now Asia and Pakistan, they made the caste system there. The Shudras were the lowest caste. And they make our black people Dalits. So by the time black people were captured and taken back to Asia and the Middle East, they went into a caste system that already had their dark-skinned people, the Shudras, as the lower caste. So automatically, here are these people captured by war. They become low class. So when Rhonda was talking about India, Rhonda know what she was talking about. The lower classiness of dark-skinned people, of blackness, is ancient, is old. Islam did not start out as anti-black. Islam, the people who started Islam were black-skinned Arabs. So blackness was not a coarse color. But it was later when Islam started exchanging notes with Hebrew, the European Hebrews and the European Christians. And they all came to the agreement that blackness was low class. But Islam did not start as anti-black. Christianity did not start as anti-black. It grew over time. So by the time our brothers and sisters came across, at the end of enslavement, they came from societies where they were hearing and perhaps experiencing anti-black racism. Blacks contributed a lot to Christianity. Go back to the Old Testament. Blacks contributed a lot to early Islam. Go back to the early editions of the Quran. We had a history before enslavement. It was the Songhai, people from the Songhai civilization that discovered that you could use camels because they can hold water for long, and they became that source of trade between West Africa and Asia and Southern Europe. And Songhai developed such an elaborate system of government, regional government. And they developed agriculture technology and other technology, hence the University of Timbuktu as the first university in the world. It was the advanced nature of those African civilizations that led them to an embrace of tertiary education, hence the University of Timbuktu. So when our foreparents came from West Africa, they were highly skilled people in agriculture. The old Nubia and Egypt and Ethiopia were along the Nile Valley, the Nile River. And those were Nile Valley civilizations, very advanced in agriculture, very advanced in gender equality. Women owned property, more property than men. Nowadays, you got to put your husband's name on the property, then you put your wife's name on the property. In Egypt, especially in Nubia. So by the time they brought us here against our will, we were skilled people. That's why the white man them could stay in Europe and the plantation run nice. Because we had management skills that we brought with us. And I want to say one last thing. This thing about we sell we Mati into slavery. Here's the story. Tribes in Africa who fought in an era where the bounty was that you took back to the tribe, to your tribe, those who you conquered through war. So they weren't selling their people. These were enemy tribes. They were selling their enemies. It don't make it better. But I want to give you all the facts. So when they tell you all, when you all sell Martin to slavery, to make you all feel some of the black people messed up. All over the world, tribes were selling their enemy tribes into slavery. The Native Indians were doing it right there in the Americas. You see, they don't like we open we mouth. They don't like we open mouth and talk we story because they want to make us look bad. But you all didn't send us to school to learn the story and not to use it to defend you all. That one, Ravidev like always talk about how black people came as indentured servants and that they undercut the ones who came from Barbados and West Africa. They undercut the wages of the freed slaves. But that is true. The system forced them. Not them. They didn't come from Africa and come to Barbados and say, we come here to undercut the freed slaves' wages. The system. And the fact that those Africans from Barbados, indentured servants, those indentured servants from Africa, they quickly settled into the black communities. The communities of the free slaves, they quickly shows that there was not any enmity. But what Ravidev is skillfully trying to do is to say it's not East Indians and Portuguese and Chinese who undercut your labor, it's your own black people. Always trying to set us against each other. It was a system of indentureship that was used to undercut. But those blacks who came here as the indentures did not see themselves as historical enemies of the freed blacks. They quickly settled into those communities. Don't twist our history. Because you got to talk to people like me. And it's that history we want to pass on to you all. Don't buy into their narratives. It was a system of indentureship that made the indentured laborers undercut the wages of the free slaves. But those who came from Africa and who came from Barbados, there was no difference issues. They quickly folded into the communities of the freed slaves. But those who came from Asia, our East Indian brothers and sisters, our Chinese brothers and sisters and Portuguese, they had already, some of them would have come with their anti-black biases. And so it was easy to use divide and rule and to pit them against Africans. That's the real history. It is not that blacks came as indentured servants and they fought against their fellow blacks. The system put them against their fellow blacks. But the issue of sameness made them overcome that. And they became part of the community of freed Africans. I will get me started tonight on a second program. And you all not going away, you all staying. I love you all so much. We get to do this and so on. I hope I've been able to leave you all with some real history tonight. How did our African people get to Asia? How did they get to Europe? And as Ivan van Sortimer said, they came before Columbus. It was those people who crossed and came over to Americas before Columbus. Learn about the Songhai. Learn about the civilization Ghana, which became the Gold Coast. Europeans and Asians were going there and trying to get gold from what was then the Ghana civilization. Gold. They want trade in trinklets, gold. And that Eastern Slave Project, in which Africans were enslaved in the Middle East and in Asia, places that have now become India and Pakistan and Turkey. Black people were enslaved in those places. The women were made concubines. The men, for the most part, had to go and fight wars for those tribes that enslaved them. That's the difference with transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade, they bring them and put them on the plantation. Different kind of work, but at the end of the day, slave work. So there was an Eastern slave connection. All right, enough for extra lessons. Tomorrow night, Eric Phillips is going to be here. And he knows the story even better than me, right? So we're going to be talking about, because he is the behind the scenes man with the reparations thing, with the Gladstones that come in, and so on and so forth. He's going to be here tomorrow night. See y'all. Extra lessons are over. Until tomorrow. Love you all so much.